Okay, I think I'm back. We'll see if this works. So today, let me go back and show you what I'm going to be doing today is water etching. So today's live stream is going to be on water etching. I am not entirely certain if I will be able to see comments because it does appear that I'm only seeing comments in a very small group instead of in our larger group. So what I wanted to talk about today is water etching, which is a technique for texturing clay when it's in the bone dry state. So let's say you have a piece that you wanted to add texture to, but it's already too dry to do carving or stamping or other more normal, common ways of texturing your piece. So you can switch, you can switch plans and do water etching, and you can see that this piece has kind of a swirled texture on it.
Are you expecting me to be able to see you?
In the inset.
None of them are working.
I can see me on the live stream, and I can hear you. So I'm going to keep going. I just can't see any. I can't see any comments. There you are. Angela says, there you are. Good morning. Hi. Hi, Lala Studio. So water etching. I have a bone dry piece of ware, which is the first thing that I need to have. And the next thing, I'll need to have a brush. You can do it with a sponge too, but I like using a brush. You'll need to have water and a clean sponge. And there are lots of things that you can use for your resist for water etching. One of the requirements, well, it's not a requirement, but you should use a smooth clay body that has a lot of sand or grog or grit. You will end up with a gritty surface after you sponge it back. So it works best on smooth clays. So our wax resist, for one thing, it's blue so I can see where it goes on, and it cleans up really easy. Another thing about wax resist, you generally have it in the studio, so you're not having to keep an extra thing. Another thing that I've used is acrylic medium. You can use different kinds of acrylic mediums. They work really well. Shellac works really well, so if you have that on hand, that works great. So what I do, I'm going to, first off, I have to decide on my design and open my wax resist and then use my brush. Sally, hi from Jamaica, and hi Tom. It's good to see people. So I can apply whatever kind of design I want, and in this case I'm just going to do some squiggles. Squiggles and lines are usually my go-to. The sample that I showed was kind of a henna mandala sort of design that I did. You know, I think I'm going to do clouds. So just paint some loose clouds with wax and see how I can easily see where my wax is as we add a dye to our wax. And this will make a texture. It won't be a super deep texture. You can make it deeper with more sponging, but it generally is kind of a subtle texture. And like I said, Works great with the Celadons because they do highlight that subtle texture. It works okay with some other glazes. Most of the Potter's Choice glazes will obscure the texture too much, but some of them it will work. Like the Deep Olive Speckle works really well with the water etching. The only problem with using wax is you have to be careful not to load your brush too much because you can end up with drips. And then you have to kind of carve them off and it can leave a mark. So I'm just using my brush to brush some little clouds on. Now the next thing is you do have to make sure that you let whatever resist you're using, you need to let it dry completely. So whether I'm using wax or shellac or gel medium, I'll usually let it sit and dry for at least a couple of hours, if not overnight. And then wash my brush. So there I have my wax design on there. Close my wax up. Do we have any questions? Not seeing them?
Just hello from Indy.
So while that dries, set that aside. And I have a little cup, bone dry cup. And I already put the wax on here and let it dry. So you can see the wax. And set my brush aside. So I have a nice clean sponge, and I'm just going to gently begin to sponge right over the top of the waxed area. And the more I do this, the higher the design will be. Now, of course, since this is bone dry, I have to be really careful in how I handle the piece so I don't break it.
We do have a question.
Okay.
What other PCs work?
Let's see. I think Blue Rutile probably would work pretty well. Textured Turquoise, Honey Flux. I'm going through in my mind one at a time. I think PC40 True Celadon would work really well, as would 45 dark green. You can see how it's already starting to erode away around the clouds, and the clouds are starting to stand up a little bit. I'm not sure if you can really see that in the video, but little by little. Now this is AMACO's AMIX 11M AMIX. So it is a white, smooth stoneware and has very, very, very little grit to it. So it works great for this. Like I said, if you use a clay that has grog or grit, it's going to leave a rough surface. Going through, let's see, what other glazes. Trying to think of which. PC52 dark, Deep Sienna Speckle would work well. Most of the Celadons would work great, but I've already said that. Let me think. Cosmic Tea Dust might show it off, even though it's not a translucent glaze. It's fairly thin on the surface, so you might actually see the texture of water etching with it. But little by little, those clouds start to pop out from the background of the cup. You can see it's kind of a messy process. I like to do it over a bucket so I don't get clay in my sink and I don't make a big mess all over the floor. So that is basically the etching. And then glazing. Now there is one other technique I wanted to show you with the water etching. You've probably noticed over to the side I have this plate, and this is water etching. It's water etching on top of underglazes. So I had a bone dry plate that I painted with underglazes, and then I did a water etch design on top of the underglaze, and then sponged it back so it shows the clay body underneath. So you can actually do different things with water etching. Beyond just getting texture, you can do color as well. It is really fun. So let's see, I'm going to do this one, and I brought in the Celadon Fog. It's one of my favorite Celadons. It's kind of a gray with a blue tone to it, slightly blue, gray, green color, very soft. And it might be more visible now that once I start putting glaze on it. But the Celadons will kind of enhance even the subtle textures. In fact, if you look at most of the Celadon labels, there is a little bit of water etching in the label tiles. And you can combine it with different things, so you can combine carving and water etching, stamping, as I showed you, underglazes with water etching. Lots of different ways to use this technique. Do we have any more questions? No?
Doesn't look like it.
I'm sure that there are some questions coming in the 5-6 group, but I cannot view those today.
Yeah,
So
I can see them.
You can? Okay. So going forward, I will be doing the Glazing with AMACO on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of each month. So you guys can plan for that, 2nd and 4th Tuesdays. The Q in AMACO will be the 1st and 3rd Mondays of each month, except that we're going to have some cancellations happening in March. On the 20th, I will not be going live because we have an event going on here at AMACO that day. So I will not be live that day. So I will do the inside of this later, but that just gives you an idea of how it's very, very straightforward, easy to glaze. So water etching, yeah, another question?
You mentioned acrylic medium for resist, any special type?
No, just any kind of acrylic gel medium. You could even use acrylic paint, but it might have dyes in it that would, might have things in it that would stain your clay when you fire it. I just use a regular acrylic gel medium, any kind of, it could be a matte medium, a gloss medium, just any kind of clear medium. But wax the Wax Resist works really well. Any other questions today?
Nope.
Well, thank you all for joining me in my texture and explorations. And I will see you all next Monday. I'll be here live on Monday. That will be the 20th, to just answer any questions on glaze in general. So thanks again. Happy glazing.